Empires of the Indus, The Story of a River by Alice, is a historical and travel narrative that explores the history, culture, and geography of the Indus River and its surrounding regions. Alice embarks on a journey along the Indus River, which stretches from the Tibetan Plateau to the Arabian Sea. Her narrative weaves together the ancient and modern histories of the diverse civilization that have flourished along the river's bank. The book is divided into several chapters, each focusing on different aspects and regions associated with the Indus. Number 1, Tibetan Plateau and Upper Indus. She starts her journey in Tibet, exploring the river's source and the cultural practices of the Tibetan people. She delves into the region's religious and historical significance. Number 2, Pakistan and the ancient Indus Valley civilization. Traveling through Pakistan, the author examines the remnants of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, one of the world's earliest urban cultures. She discusses the archaeological findings and the civilization contribution to human history. Number 3, Islamic influence and conquests. The narrative shifts to the Islamic conquests and the establishment of various empires, including the Ghaznavid and Mughal empires. The author highlights the cultural and architectural legacies left by these empires along the Indus. Number 4, British colonial era. The author explores the impact of British colonial rule on the Indus region, focusing on the changes brought by British administration, infrastructure projects, and the partition of India and Pakistan. Number 5, modern day and environmental issues. The book addresses contemporary issues faced by the Indus River, including environmental degradation, water disputes, and the impact of climate change. She meets with local communities and experts to understand the challenges and efforts to preserve the river. Throughout her journey, the author provides a clear and engaging account of the people she encounters, the landscapes she traverses, and the rich tapestry of history that defines the Indus River. This book offers readers a comprehensive and insightful look into one of the world's most significant rivers. In a land where it seldom rains, a river is as precious as gold. Water is potent. It trickles through human dreams, dictates agriculture, religion, and warfare. Ever since Homo sapiens first migrated out of Africa, the Indus has drawn thirsty conquerors to its banks. Some of the world's first cities were built here. India's earliest Sanskrit literature was written about the river. Islam's holy preachers wandered beside these waters. Pakistan is only the most recent of the Indus Valley political avatars. As I look back to the history, it seemed that everywhere I turned, the Indus was present. Its merchants traded with Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago. A Persian emperor mapped it in the 6th century BCE. The Buddha lived beside it during previous incarnations. Greek kings and Afghan sultans waded across it with their armies. The founder of Sikhism belonged to this region, and the British invaded it by gunboat, colonized it for 100 years, and then severed it from India. The Indus was part of Indian lives until 1947. The very name of India comes from the river. The ancient Sanskrit speakers called the Indus Sindhu, the Persians changed the name to Hindu, and the Greeks dropped the H altogether. From the time that Alexander the Great's historians wrote about the Indus Valley, spinning exotic tales of India, and its river tantalized the Western imagination. Hundreds of years later, when India was divided, it might have been logical for the new Muslim state in the Indus Valley to take the name India or even Industan, as the valley was called by an 18th century English settler. But Muhammad Ali Jinnah rejected the idea and chose the pious name Pakistan, land of the pure instead. He assumed that his rivals in Delhi would do the same, calling their country by the ancient Sanskrit title Bharat. When they did not, Jinnah was reported to be furious. He felt that by continuing to use the British name, India had appropriated the past. Pakistan, by contrast, looked as if it had been sliced off and thrown out. During the 2 years that I lived in Delhi, I wondered about these things. It was river itself that was most enticing. I dream about that river, which begins in Tibet and ends near Karachi, in the shimmer of the Arabian Sea. During the past 76 years, Pakistan have been brutalized by the violence of military dictatorships, enraged or deceived by the state's manipulation of religion, and are now being terrorized by the West's war on terror. But Pakistan is more than the sum of its general and jihadis. The Indus Valley has a continuous history of political, religious, and literary ferment stretching back thousands of years, a history which Pakistanis share with Tibetans and Indians. From the deserts of Sindh to the mountains of Tibet, the Indus is worshipped by peasants and honored by poets more than priests or politicians. Indus is one of the largest rivers in the world. It has been worshipped as a god, used as a tool of imperial expansion, and today is the cement of Pakistan's fractious union. The author traveled to all type of areas of Sindh to gather her material. She has done a great service to the people of Sindh and many other curious minds and admirers of history. Tragically, the author finds that China has dammed the river a short way from the mouth. Fortunately, the Indus is fed by many powerful tributaries all along its course, so the millions of people downstream who depend on the river are not lost. The author was in danger several times due to the political instability of the region. She crossed borders into Afghanistan, Ladakh, and Tibet. She is a brave traveler. Military coups and autocratic leaders have been the norm here. The book takes us to the times of Alexander the Great and covers the Kalash people who are said to be the descendants of the Greeks. You may start feeling sad about the political, economic, and social scenarios described in the book, due to which that river, which predates humans by millions of years, is disappearing. The Indus River is a trans-boundary river more than 3,000 kilometers long. According to the author, a notable difference between India and Pakistan is in cultural religiosity. I think this showy religiousness came in at the time of Zia. At any rate, it was a great contrast to my experience of India, where I hardly knew anyone who was so religious. In Pakistan, even if someone is not particularly religious, they would never say it out loud. You have to be really careful about these things. The Indus River being a place where not only have civilizations been created, but powers and empires have fought wars to control this vital river system. And this highly productive and culturally diverse group of population. The author traces and correlates the origin, rise, or fall of various religions on the banks of the Indus. Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Christianity all evolved through centuries and highly influenced by invasions on the Indus Valley. Hinduism proliferated during the early 11th and 10th century AD and has persisted through the centuries despite invasion by the Muslim rulers in the Indus Valley. The author describes the Sadhubala temple in Pakistan, the Hindus worshipping Jhule Lal, the river god of Indus who travels on four palla fish, and then there was the spread of Buddhism mainly by King Ashoka as far as the borders of Afghanistan. The Buddhist people of Ladakh and Tibet, Chinese pilgrims tracing the routes of spread of Buddhism centuries ago. Everything come alive in author's description. Then Islam came with Sultan Mahmud of Ghaznavi, whose plundering of the famed Indian treasures is a historical legend. Mughals followed, but with varying tolerance for other religions, from Emperor Akbar's exemplary tolerance to Aurangzeb's zilch religious tolerance. Then Sikhism started out in the 15th century with Guru Nanak's birth in the Indus Valley and the spread of Sikhism throughout the centuries by the rest of the 10 Gurus. Maharaja Ranjit Singh's rule and the holy place Nankana Sahib is still in Pakistan. She also visits the Golden Temple in Amritsar on the bank of Indus. Christianity came late with the British invasion of India and it is spread by Christian missionaries. The influence of British on the people and the customs of this region, the tactics followed by the British to spread their empire are wonderfully detailed in this book, right up to the independence of India. The author deals with the partition of India, the after effects, the large-scale migration, and the horrible massacres in the name of religion and the geographical boundaries which were peacefully cohabited by the same people for ages. The divide and rule policy of British culminating in the partition of India, the thoughts and arguments of the Indian and Pakistani politicians who witnessed, welcomed, or argued this change. A valuable insight is provided in the book. The author also describes the people and their varying customs in every place with perfect detailing: the Pashtuns, the Shidis, the Dards, the Kailash being the most interesting. The Kailash have their own religion, resides in mountains northern Pakistan, a community whose customs have remained same through thousands of years, believed to be the original Aryans, has the customs of burying people in open coffins, and the woman enjoys the kind of freedom which is rare in the country. She also writes about the communities of Ladakh and Tibet, where women have dominated men throughout the centuries. Architecture and heritage sites are a prominent feature in this book. The Harappan and Mohenjo-daro civilization, the Buddhist status, the numerous caves and stone circles populating the Indus banks, the temples and mosques dating back thousands of years, and stone carvings some dating back to 80,000 years. She encounters them all. She wrote, "Little has been done for their preservation by the archaeological societies. Poorly planned and construction of dams by all the countries through which the Indus flows is highly condemned in the book. By construction of the dams in India and Pakistan, Punjab has the best irrigated fields, but the people of the delta have to drink diluted sewage water or the highly saline water. Agriculture is impossible, and only fishing in the ocean remains the only source of livelihood there." She also describes Shidis in particular, or Makranis, who claim to be the descendants of Bilal, an Ethiopian man who was Prophet Muhammad's companion. She said, "If a dam is the supreme symbol of man's attempt to control nature, the nomads of the Tibetan Plateau are exemplars of harmony." It is rather ironic to know that India derives its name from the river Indus, which is now almost completely in Pakistan. One of the Buddha statue, which stood on a lonely wooded hillside in the Swat area of Pakistan. With minimal prose, the author tells us of the beauty of this serene image on the mountainside. It is only later that we know that in 2007, extremists dynamited this statue and drilled away its head and shoulders. The statue, untouched since before the time of Prophet Muhammad, was thus reduced to dust in a few hours. Another important point is the river Indus itself, a massive body of water that has withstood countless years is now slowly but surely deformed by man-made incursions. The author sums it up best by saying, "I feel sad for the river, for this wild and magnificent, modern, historic, prehistoric river, for this river which was flowing for millions of years before humans even saw it, for this river which has nurtured the earth since the land rose from the ocean." And here are the names of the chapter: Ramzan in Karachi, conquering the classic river, the Guru's army up the Khyber, Buddha on the Silk Road, Alexander at the outer ocean, on and on. Modern Karachi has a reputation as an edgy, brutal city. There are riots in Karachi, shootouts, bomb blasts, and kidnapping. Power failures are common. Corruption is normal. Jumping red light is prudent. For a city of such extremes, Arabian Sea often seems like its only solace. There had been problems throughout 1946 religious rioting in Calcutta, Hindu Muslim tension, and Jinnah himself had warned that the partition of Bengal and the Punjab would have terrible consequences. If the historian Aisha Jalal is right that Jinnah never wanted the division of India, it was Congress which insisted on it. Then 1947 can only be viewed as a tragic blunder. Perhaps had Jinnah been able to predict that hundreds of thousands of people would lose their lives, he might have called the whole thing. He certainly never imagined that such a massive transfer of population would be necessary. Jinnah family were Ismailis and his father was a Gujarati hide dealer. In July, when Hindus began returning, Sindhi refugees having found themselves unwelcome in many areas of India. It questioned the government's wisdom in letting these non Muslims back into the country. Hamida blames the Pakistani government for encouraging a dangerous decline in administrative standards. Above all, she indicts Jinnah as the architect of Pakistan authoritarian culture. For Hamida, as for many of the Karachi's inhabitants in 1947, Pakistan was a nasty shock, a Himalayan blunder. As a brand new country, Pakistan was searching for meaning. Its government appointed scribes immediately began rewriting Indo Muslim history in a manner befitting the new homeland. But heroes were needed, and everybody looked to the founder of the nation. Even before his death, Jinnah was promoted as the national ideal, selfless, self regulated, and Islamic. The real Jinnah has been forgotten. Kavas ji shows me a photograph of Jinnah. He was in a lawn with his dogs, a cigarette in his smiling mouth. Regarding British invasion to Afghan, she wrote, The British army fled in confusion. Of the 4,500 soldiers and 12,000 camp followers who left Kabul in January 1842, only one man reached safely in Jalalabad. A handful of officers and their wives were taken hostage. Everybody else was killed by Afghan snipers, by starvation, or by the cold. A news of the British disaster trickled into London and Calcutta. Sir Henry Fane, commander-in-chief of the army until 1838, had apparently resigned out of distaste for the injustice of the Afghan expedition. He was said to have warned in 1837, every advance you make beyond the Satluj to the westward adds to your military weakness. Muhammad Ali Jinnah picture with dogs. The Shidis, descendants of the freed African slaves Bilal in Hyderabad. Guru Nanak, founder of Sikhism, taking a bath. Sikhs bathing at the Golden Temple in Amritsar, Punjab. Maharaja Ranjit Singh's army, they gave an order to train Punjabi soldiers in European fighting techniques. A 16th century illustration of Sultan Mahmud of Ghaznavi kissing the feet of the sleeping Ayas his slave lover. The romance between Mahmud and Ayaz became an iconic theme in Indo Persian culture. Emperor Akbar giving thanks for a military victory on the banks of the river Indus. This illustration from the Akbarnama, the official history of Emperor Akbar's. This event took place in 1572. The photograph of Samuel Haq, who was the member of parliament in Pakistan, holding Kalashnikov in one hand and Quran on the other hand. Shah Abdul Latif was 28 years old when Shah Inayat was executed, and perhaps because of this, he never challenged the feudal powers directly. As a Sindhi professor of literature tells me, it was Shah Abdul Latif who made Sindh live after the Indus. Until Shah Abdul Latif began composing poetry, Muslim poets in India wrote in Persian. It was Shah Abdul Latif who wrote in their own tongue. The Indus is also central to the story of Sassu, Shah Abdul Latif's other favorite heroine, a Hindu orphan discovered in the Indus by the Muslim washerman and brought up as a child. When she grows up, Sassi falls in love with Pannu, a Bloch noble who pretends to humble birth in order to woo her. His aristocratic family is enraged by this folly and abducts him one night while she was sleeping. Latif recounts Sassu's long journey on foot in her lover's wake across the Balochistan desert, where she dies, far from the Indus lands that were her home. Shah Abdul Latif has always been as beloved by Sindhis Hindus as by Sindhis Muslims. And every year, Hindu scholars from India are invited to the government-sponsored literary festival held during the Urs. Shah Abdul Latif himself spent some 3 years in the company of Hindu yogis. If Babar caused chaos in the Punjab, Guru Nanak made it his mission to give his people something to live for. He rejected the caste-bound Brahmins as butchers and the Muslim kings as satanic exploiters and centered his sect around Punjabi identity itself. He wrote all his poetry in Punjabi. In his 1963 History of the Sikh, Khashwant Singh describes Guru Nanak as the first popular leader of the Punjab. The period of Sikh-Muslim harmony came to an abrupt end with Akbar's death. Jahangir, the new emperor, had always been suspicious of non-Muslim sects and of the Sikhs in particular. Barely a decade after the British conquered the Punjab, Indian soldiers in northern India mutinied. The Punjab, however, did not rise. Instead, many Sikhs in 1857 fought for the British against their fellow Indians. British responded by recruiting large number of Punjabis to the army, considering them the finest of India's hardy races. During both World Wars, up to half the Indian army was comprised of Punjabis, Punjabi Muslim dominated, followed by Sikh. Even now, in a classic statement of nostalgia, a Sikh veteran of the British Army tells me, still today, every Sikh would lay down their life for the Britishers. In the 19th century, the link between the military and the Punjab was assured by the British policy of granting a plot of irrigated land to soldiers upon retirement. This soon became the principal incentive for joining up. In a direct continuation from the colonial era, it was Punjabi military men who assumed power in the independent nation. For over half its life, Pakistan has lived under army rule. An army that is still three-quarters Punjabis, with Punjabi ex-servicemen taking jobs in the civil sector, Punjabi farmers taking more than their fair share of Indus water, and army farms and business buying up land and power all over the country. Every Pakistani who is not Punjabi complains of Punjabi imperialism. From 1953 onwards, the post-colonial Indian state began to address the imbalance of Punjabis in their army by recruiting from areas like Tamil Nadu and Gujarat that the British had not considered martial, and by ceasing to recruit Sikhs. Pakistan, however, maintained the colonial status quo. To this day, the lack of recruitment from outside the Punjab creates an imbalance of power, and it is a policy with a dangerous history. In 1971, discrimination against Bengali soldiers contributed to the succession of East Pakistan as Bangladesh. Yet, even losing half the country and suffering humiliating defeat in a war against India, the army has continued to consolidate its Punjabi interests. Pakistani says Sindhis and Balochis is a country run by and for Punjabi soldiers. Traveling through the irrigated croplands of the Punjab to Lahore, I meet a good many Pakistani army officers, including several generals who have worked with both of the last two military dictators. The driver told me that both his father and grandfather were landless peasants from western Punjab. He himself spent 5 years in the army, during which time he was trained as a clerk and driver and given a firearm license. This has enabled him to work since then as a secretary, taxi driver, and a security guard. And even now, he and his family receive free medical treatment. This in a country with severely impaired public health care. If, like his brothers, he had stayed in the army until retirement, he would have been given some land or cash as well. Nankana Sahib today is a dry and dusty place. During Nanak's lifetime, the village stood in the middle of the Leelan Wali Bar, the forest of blue deer. But within years of the British taking over the Punjab, neither trees nor deer were left. The woods disappeared, uprooted to make way for the huge wheat and rice fields. If Sikhs are so happy in Pakistan, I say finally, why are there no Sikh in the army? I am thinking of the ultimate irony that the Pakistan army, which has its roots in Sikh martial traditions, has never conscripted a single Sikh.